Hello, it's Tari again. I know it's been a while. Real life, or life, I should say, got in the way. We've been dealing with some stuff. Nothing bad, just a lot of stuff. So, welcome back to JTS Wargaming. I am here to happily record my reaction to the second part of every single Warhammer 40K faction explained. So I want to make sure that I say happily so that no one gives me shit in the comments that I'm doing this and I'm so upset. So
Plug your channel.
plug my channel. Sorry. Bernard was just telling me I should do a shameless plug. I don't want to do this plug. I made a channel. It has like no videos on it, but if you guys could see it in your hearts to check it out when it is officially linked, that would be great. Anyway, every single Warhammer 40K faction explained part 2. Before we get into that, I just want to show you guys an update of Cindy. This is probably a very terrible perspective of her. She is gorgeous. Bernard did an amazing job. At the end, maybe we'll do a little turntable view of her, but she is so cute. And I know last time I said I would have my hat so I could look like an inquisitor with like my eye patch and my candle, but maybe by the next video. We kind of forgot about that. But anyway, here we go. We are gonna see, everyone keeps telling me that I'm gonna love the orcs, so I know something a little bit about them, but not a lot, obviously. So here we go.
Hey all, this is part 2 in a 2-part series on the Warhammer races. If you haven't seen part 1 yet, we do the Imperium of Man. You can check that out in the description, and I would highly recommend you watch that to get context for this episode. If you already have, go ahead and keep on watching. So after an entire episode of nothing but humans, we can now talk about Chaos, which involves humans again, but a little bit less. We also got demons and shit.
I just felt someone grab my ass.
What?
Like hard, Nick.
So, as I've mentioned many times
Oh
before,
God,
we
we got the legs again.
The immaterium, the hellish landscape, the purgatory dimension realm between the material realm of our existence. Now, in the warp, it's terrifying, horrible. There are demons everywhere. Things are crazy. All your minds and thoughts and emotions get projected there. It is both formless and empty. It is vast and tiny. It obeys the laws of time and physics while simultaneously does absolutely nothing of the sort. It is a hodgepodge and a culmination of just unknowable, eldritch, horrifying shit. And there are 4 gods that permeate in Chaos and the Warp. These are the 4 major Chaos gods. And if we wish to learn about Chaos, we need to learn about each and every single one of these Chaos gods. First up,
I again forgot that he's doing those leg things. So I'm just like, what am I looking at? It just looks like I'm looking at, I don't know, they look like 2 sausages, but all right.
we have Khorne, and he is the easiest. Khorne is your classic Satan. He is all about anger, murder, fighting, blood, guts, death. You ever heard the term blood for the blood god, skulls for the skull throne? That's Khorne. The whole idea is that he is all about the fury and strength of battle. He doesn't care where blood comes from so long as blood is flowing. He wants to fight and murder and carnage and slaughter and death, 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 death. That is Khorne. Very simple to understand. Next up you have Tzeentch, and Tzeentch is the god of change. However, the god of change, it's permeates in so many different other ways. He's the most eldritch of all the demon gods. He has this weird way to always be plucking at the strings of the universe. He's always conniving and scheming and doing his best to cause as much little bullshit as he can. Tzeentch is unknowable. Everything that makes sense, he will and won't do. Every future and setting and every type of destiny or fate is all foretold and also changeable. It is set in stone while also completely random. He knows what everything is going to happen and also that none of it's going to happen. You would ask Tzeentch a question. That question leads to 3 more questions, and those questions lead to the heat death of the universe, which asks 4 answers to those questions. And then he thinks to himself, what are questions even really? And are you even asking the questions, or are you simply giving paths to answers and other horse shit? Zeech is just, I'm gonna fuck with stuff. He is yes and he is no. He is the understanding and he is complexity. He is unknowable. And that's what the God of Change is about. Very bizarre. And he likes birds a lot. I don't know why. Next up, we got Papa Nurgle. Papa Nurgle, he loves you for who you are. Probably not. He will murder you just the same. But Papa Nurgle is about rot, pestilence, death, and decay. He is the end of everything. Him and Zeech do not like each other very much because where Zeech represents change and adjustment, Nurgle represents stagnation and death. He is all about miasma and pestilence and large bloat and pus and organs and people just being sedentary, sloth. He is the idea that everything will rot and decay. And
He's the guy who is the god for Death Eaters now.
Death Eaters?
Why do I keep saying Death Eaters? I'm sorry. My man Mortarion, Death Guard.
Yes.
Death Guard.
Yes.
He's the guy.
Yes.
Okay. See, I know some, like, I'm getting there, guys. Like, bear with me. These aren't stupid questions on purpose. I'm literally just trying to bring it all together. I'm watching like 7 million videos and trying to put it all together. I feel like I need a little notepad. Maybe I'll do that on the side and like have a camera down on my notes. So I like circle and draw arrows and question marks. So wait, what's the relationship between these chaos gods? Are they like brothers? Siblings? Pieces of a whole?
They're projections of the collective consciousness of sentient beings.
So pieces of a whole?
Now, so like humans over time, like go on murder rampages and
Right.
serial killers and
As we do.
wars.
Yeah.
So corn is a thing.
Right.
We also die and have plagues and we're super spreaders and, you know, Nurgle is a thing.
Okay, so all right, fine. I'll accept it.
and die. Nothing is certain besides decay and death.
All right.
All of us will end up the same way, broken down through just sheer never-ending decomposition. So the joke that
No,
Nurgle
let's
always
agree.
loves you is generally because of that, because we all end up the same. We all rot, and we all die and wither. That's
Okay.
Nurgle, and he's got a general theme of course, pestilence and different kinds of diseases and sickness and things of that nature. That's generally Nurgle. He's pretty easy to understand as well, and he chunk. Finally, we have the youngest of the Chaos Gods, and that is Slaanesh.
Let me in, I'm trying to fuck. Let me in, I'm trying to fuck.
Also known as the Prince of Pleasure or the God of Unspeakable Excess.
That's Fulgrim. Emperor's Children. It's coming together.
Slaanesh is generally referred to with sex, but it's not
Sex!
only sex, it's just that's a good avenue if you want to make stuff. Slaanesh is just the idea of the senses of the body being cranked to not just 11, but more like 17. See, we'll discuss Slaanesh a little bit more when we talk about the Eldar, because they done fucked up, but it, or whatever, is mainly about just the excess of emotions. And therefore, sex is generally a large part of it.
going on?
However, it's mostly pain and torture.
What's going on over there? what's happening in this picture? He doesn't seem to be having a good time, but at the same time, he is having a good time,
He's having the time of his life.
which seems to be ending very quickly.
Exactly.
Gotcha. Understood.
Lots of pain, torture, but sometimes sexually related or drug related. Lots of drugs. Slaanesh gets off on everything. Extremes in happiness, extremes in sadness, extremes in pain and sadism and masochism. And of course that goes along with the sex part of it as well. It's generally referred to with sex because of the color scheme, very purple, lots of exposed genitalia. A lot of their models have like exposed nipples and stuff. And that is generally the theme you go for from a physical side, but it really embodies everything, mainly pain and also the excessive amounts of emotion. So when it comes down to it, you'll find a lot of them have things like spikes or whips or any kind of BDSM style gear because it is unspeakable excess, the prince of pleasure, everything in excess to the point where it is just sheer frightening. That is Slaanesh in a nutshell. A little bit bizarre and a little hard to describe sometimes, but as we talk more about the Dark Eldar later in this video, you'll understand it far, far better and far more than you'd want to. Now you might be thinking, why would anyone ever want to join Chaos? They all look horrifying, screwed up, and just frightening things, right? Well, the thing is that, of course, one, your mind is put into the warp and the immaterium, so you can be easily swayed by chaos demons when they get into your head, especially if you're a psyker. Sometimes regiments of the less mentally strong people, whether they be civilians or, say, low-level guardsmen or conscripts, can be easily swayed by this and become chaos cultists and stuff, and they serve their dark gods and whatever god they personally refer. However, and this might seem strange, chaos in their own right isn't necessarily evil. See, the warp is every manifestation of emotion and being, every soul, everything of existence. This includes all the good things. All the different chaos gods have another side to their coin. Khorne might be death, murder, slaughter, slaughter, but he's also got this weird sense of survival of the fittest, trial by combat, and honor. Khorne will never lie to you. Khorne will never stab you in the back. Khorne isn't about conniving and scheming. Khorne is about straight up mano-y-mano, you versus me, get in the ring, we're gonna murder each other hard right now. It may not be a good thing at the end of the day, but it is that other side of the coin. Him and Tzeentch generally don't get along because Tzeentch is that conniving schemer, but he's also about the idea of hope. Where there is change for your...
No one seems to like Tzeentch. Like, Khorne doesn't like Tzeentch. Nurgle doesn't seem to like Tzeentch.
Tzeentch is a dick.
I mean, Tzeentch seems like he's just trying to change stuff.
Tzeentch is like the Joker and the Riddler combined into one person. And I guess throw in Constantine because magic.
Because magic. So, the Riddler, the Joker, and Constantine, that is Tzeentch, apparently. Okay, cool.
Your predicament. There is change for your problem. The hope of the galaxy, the ability to bend the world to your will, the idea that your fate is not set in stone, but in reality that you control your own destiny and can control it whenever you want, the changer of ways. That is Tzeentch. And of course, Tzeentch and Nurgle hate each other because while Nurgle does represent stagnation, death, and decay, he also represents finality, an ending. The fact that you can be mentally at peace knowing that you will end and how you will end. Fear of the unknown, fear of change is not present with Nurgle. With Nurgle, everything will rot and die, and that provides that finality, that ability that this is over. We are all the same, and we will all end the same. We know the meaning of life. The meaning of life is to live and die and rot. And with that, it brings peace of mind. Slaanesh is a lot more simple.
No, it doesn't.
They are the excess of emotion. They are also the representation of emotion. Slaanesh embodies happiness. Slaanesh embodies excitement and joy and pleasure, not only in the sense of the physical, bam style of pleasure, but also everything else, like
I can't. Like, what was that? Oh boy. I might need to rewind that to see what that was. I might need to rewind it. But I'm gonna keep going.
food and drink and air on your cheek and sunlight, the feeling, emotion and feeling, all of that is also represented with Slaanesh. So you have to ask, why are they always represented as super evil skulls and spikes on everything and want to murder everybody? I don't really got an answer for you on that one. My assumption is that because mentally humans may think worse thoughts even if we don't act on them, and therefore they're projected in the warp more. That one's a little bit weird. I don't know. This is me spitballing right now, but I don't know. You need a super bad guy. You already got the Imperium of Man. You need somebody to be a little bit worse than them. So you got demons. Honestly, who cares? I just want to buy like
Oh, that's so pretty. Okay, so it's a bird. So that's Tzeentch?
Yes.
Okay, cool. That is so pretty. That is very beautifully painted. That is one thing I will give people in this hobby, like, y'all are some creative people. Like, I keep telling Bernard if he gave me something to paint, it would be like, but ow, in a can of paint, and that would be it. Man, this is freaking gorgeous. Wow, that's pretty.
Like a bird magician. Look at him.
Bird
So
magician.
cool. So combining all this together on the tabletop, Chaos Demons are generally very melee based. They run in, go really hard. You have lots of summoning and conjuring, tons of spells. Generally a little bit frail, but they have special saves to make them a little bit stronger. You've got giant demons and smaller demons. You got hordes of little boys and tons of big guys. Demons are as they seem. Demons. Nurgle is slow, Khorne is super scary in melee, you've got Tzeentch who are far more into psychers and spellcasting, and then Slaanesh who is all melee, really fast but squishy, but in lots of hordes of tons of melee and pain damage, of course. So overall, the demons are a huge part of 40K and a massive threat to almost every single faction with the exception of a couple. However, the big part about demons is also transferred into the other 9 Primarchs we didn't talk about, which are the Chaos Space Marines. So
Did he really use the SpongeBob? Oh god, I love whoever his editor is. I love him. That was very interesting. I didn't know. I didn't think to see the Chaos Gods and like that other side of the coin kind of thing. That's pretty freaking cool. Like, it's much respect to the people who created this universe. Like, they thought stuff out, even though there's some things that I'm like questions, but yeah.
Horse and all of his boys, all of them in the Primarchs, they have all also become Chaos Boys, and they all have their own special Chaos Legions, specializing in so many different things, just like the Adeptus Astartes, the Angels of Death, the regular Space Marines. Chaos Space Marines aren't a whole lot different than the regular Space Marines. They have the same armor, generally the same training and toughness. They just specialize in different kinds of things. And also a lot of the Primarchs have ascended into greater demons? They're demon Primarchs at this point. Gigantic, horrifying man-demon hybrids that are pretty awesome, if I'm going to be honest. They look really cool. But them and their associated legions that they are a part of are all kind of going out there and causing a large ruckus for everyone else. Considering the raw strength and firepower of a legion of Space Marines, imagine that entire legion just converting to chaos and immediately fighting you. It's generally pretty horrifying. There's a lot of them, so I gotta write them down, but you've got the Emperor's Children with Primarch Fulgrim, loyal to Slaanesh. These people, they are some messed up people. They're just sensory overload, tons of drugs, tons of torture. And I think Fulgrim is a demon Primarch right now, and oh god, I am terrified to see what that man looks like, at least on the tabletop, because Emperor's Children are not good people. You've got the Iron Warriors, which are kind of like opposite of the Imperial Fists, with Primarch Perturabo, I believe is his name. They're Chaos Undivided. They just kind of serve chaos in a general aspect instead of choosing one of the 4. But the Iron Warriors are big on the siege and fortification, and they're basically entirely against the Imperial Fists and a major rival. Perturabo, I believe, is also still alive, and I'm also very interested to see what he looks like, because Demon Primarchs are badass. You've got the Night Lords with Primarch Conrad Kurz. Conrad Kurz is dead, which is good. He's a sick fuck. But the Night Lords are generally about terrorizing people, and terrorism. They're generally about fear, and rightly so. You've got the World Eaters with Primarch.
So if, like, for example, if a Primarch is dead and his legion is still running around being chaos, like Conrad Kurz, who's leading.
They fracture into little warbands.
Okay.
So, like, it could be a captain who was strong enough to keep people in check. Maybe he's got, 100 people following him. Some of them will actually, like, kind of sell themselves as mercenaries to other legions. So, like, some of them will work for Abaddon.
Interesting. Okay. Cool, I guess. No one cares about Conrad Kurz. No one.
Primarch Angron, still
Angron!
alive. I'm also excited to see. Angron, if you think you've known an angry person, Angron is the angriest son of a bitch you will ever know. Angron removed parts of his brain that didn't make him angry, so he could be angrier.
Gotta be angry.
Angron, fucker's mad. You've got the Death Guard with Primarch Mortarion. They actually have their own special codex and their own major army on the tabletop. Mortarion himself is actually one of
Wow.
the models, and look at him. Look at him. It's so cool looking. Of course, Nurgle based, obviously. So very slow, but very tanky. You've got the Word Bearers with Primarch Lorgar.
Lorgar!
Lorgar is, I believe, still alive. I don't know what's up with him at the current moment, but the Word Bearers are generally the people who caused all the major problems in the beginning. At
Okay.
least
First of all, define problems. Do you mean bringing information to light? Yes. Lorgar did nothing wrong. Say it
I
again.
blame them for it. They're little assholes.
No, they're
Black Legion
not.
with Primarch Horus.
Horus!
Get fucked, nerd. You've got the Alpha Legion with Primarch Alfarius Omegon. Chaos.
Wait, what did I call him again? What did I call him? Alfarius and... What did I call him again?
His name.
Omega Ryan. There it is. Omega fucking Ryan. I'm gonna make a shirt. And I hope you guys will buy my shirt that says Omega Ryan. Alfarius. Alphabets and Omega Ryan. That's his name. Those are their names now. Alphabets and Omega Ryan. I am Alphabets. You are Alphabets. We are all Alphabets. I like their color scheme. What is that like? What would you call that?
Kind of like a turquoise, but leaning more into the green.
That is a nice color. Everyone else seems kind of lame.
I think. And then finally, you've got the Thousand Sons with Primarch Magnus the Nerd. Thousand Sons
Magnus
also have
the
their
Nerd.
own book just like the Death Guard. Magnus is also a tabletop
Oh.
model. He looks super cool.
Is that
as
what you
can tell.
wanted to buy?
I wanted to get Angron or Mortarion.
Oh, okay. And you missed it.
Yeah.
There was apparently some sale. And you didn't buy what you wanted to buy.
I mean, I'll take Magnus as a consolation prize.
You didn't say that.
I'm
Now the
saying
time
it now.
the time has passed. Sorry.
And they're all super heavily Psyker and kind of Egyptian themed. They look pretty neat. But overall, with all of these Chaos Space Marine factions, you can play as a lot of different ones, but the main ones that you can really work at are standard Space Marines, Chaos Space Marines, as well as the Death Guard and Thousand Sons, as they are the
So question, like, if you play 30K, you can play as the Thousand Sons. And then if you play 40K, you can actually go to the store and be like, okay, no, I need like the Chaos Thousand Sons.
Yeah, they're two different
Two
model
different
rates.
models. Okay. Cool. That's
most
interesting.
fleshed out, especially on the tabletop at least. See this right here?
Oh,
This is a really good way to describe the Chaos Space Marines. What the thick-headed fools with their broken corpse of an emperor fail to understand is that not only can they never defeat us, but they cannot hide or flee or shield themselves from the triumph of chaos. They are finite and we are unbound, undivided. They must not err, or they shall fall to heresy. All who fall join our cause. Every imperial fool who dares to open his eyes is a willing recruit. They strive merely to hold back our fury and might, and it consumes them. Thus, you can see chaos is inevitable. We lurk not only beyond.
Is he doing this on purpose? Because it cracks me up that there will just randomly be a cursor in the like, why is there a cursor there? Like, it just makes me giggle. I don't know why. It's simple, but it's funny.
Their grasp and at their gates, we lurk within the darkness of their souls, on the tip of their tongues, in their tortured dreams. We are them, but freed from the shackles of ignorance. We are them, grown strong, evolved. We are them, but so much more. As hardcore as that quote is, the saddest part is they're mostly right. Chaos is basically unkillable. You could probably get rid of Space Marines, a decent amount, the Chaos Space Marines that is, but every soul that dies goes to the warp. Every Chaos soul will end up back in the warp. And depending on how hard you killed them, they will come back at some point. Every demon you banish will return at some point. Chaos is unstoppable. The warp is unending. And while maybe there is at some point some way to stop them somehow, the resources to do so, the requirements to do so, are so far beyond the reaches of man and the other races at the current moment that really it's just an unstoppable force that just keeps on coming and is just barely being slowed.
So first of all, this universe is depressing as fuck. Second of all, like, but couldn't a powerful psyker kill? I'm just thinking, didn't the Emperor like completely destroy Horus? So couldn't did he? I'm sorry, I don't know too much about the fight itself, but did he do it like physically, or did he use psychic power? So he used psychic power, right? So couldn't they just get someone who's a strong psychic to destroy the Chaos Marine?
A Chaos Marine?
Yeah. He just said that if you kill a Chaos Marine, depending on how hard you kill them, they're probably going to come back. Their soul goes back to the warp, and then they can come back if they want to, I guess, or something.
Well, so, like, weird stuff happens, right? So, there's this guy, he's an Emperor's Children Marine, Lucius, the Eternal.
Okay.
So, like, every time you kill him, you become him.
Wait, that I didn't know.
Yeah, so you kill him, and it's really hard to kill him anyway. He's like one of the finest swordsmen in the entire galaxy.
Yeah, I remember that.
When you manage to kill him, like, his soul just jumps into your body, and then you physically turn into him.
And no one has written this down somewhere? Like, P.S. Don't kill Lucius? Like, what? Okay, so... Alright, so clearly we're not sharing information here. It's like, this would not be happening more than once. After the first time, I would send out an email like, you know, that Lucius guy, you might not want to kill him. But wait.
But, like, that's rare. So
okay.
That doesn't happen all the time.
Okay.
So, like, some people, you die, your soul goes into the warp, and then the demons just eat your soul just like they eat anybody else's soul.
Delicious.
Sometimes, like, you can ascend to, you know, demonhood yourself and, like, transform your soul into a demon. Most of the time, the gods are just like, snack. So, yeah.
Even if you're a Chaos Space Marine?
Yeah.
They don't care?
Say, for instance, like, Khorne. There's a saying in the lore where it's Khorne cares not from where the blood flows.
Right, he did say that.
So, like, if Khorne Berserker or a World Eater, like, can't kill an enemy, like, sometimes they will just straight commit suicide. Or they'll turn on their friends. So, like, Karn, his 40K sort of nickname is the Betrayer.
Okay.
Because literally in the middle of a battle, like, the last vestiges of his sanity, like, completely went away. And, like, there weren't enough of the enemy to kill. Like, they had massacred them all. So he just started turning on not only his allies, but also his own brothers.
Oh. Okay. So. Okay. Alright. I'm gonna just leave it alone.
Chaos is by far the biggest threat. They are without number. Their
Alphabets
legions are everywhere, and yeah, they're pretty scary. So, I promise, we're done with humans now. Let's talk about some Xenos.
Okay.
So let's talk about the Eldar, or also known as the Eldari, which are a super hyper-specialized and very technologically advanced race of, well, elf people. They were, as well, responsible for the creation of Slaanesh, the newest demon god. How'd they do that? Debauchery on a world-ending scale. See, back in the day, it was just Khorne, Tzeentch, and Nurgle. And the Eldar are very, very ancient. Millions of years. These Eldar, however, have a bit of a sensory problem. every kind of pain or feeling that you have is a little bit amplified compared to the normal. However, with Eldar, as their race advanced so excessively, and they became so self-reliant, and everything became so easy, there was no requirement for food production anymore, there was no shortages, everything was basically done. Everyone was so comfortable, and that comfort breeded this weird sedation, and that sedation breeded the requirement for more and more debauchery.
Debauchery!
When everything you have can be so easily acquired,
Excellent placement of
you
the
will end
SpongeBob
up
thing.
down this road of pure debauchery. All of the senses the Eldar had that were so powerful, things like feeling, happiness, sadness, and just evil and good, all needed to be satisfied and satiated. And the desire to satiate these senses grew more and more with worse and worse debauchery. It started off with things like sex and drugs becoming so much
Wait.
more rampant.
I can't. Why does he like things? Oh god, that was funny. I wasn't expecting that. It just came out of nowhere.
Because these are the first things you generally turn to when requirements for living are so easily accessible. It would get to the point that made Sander Cohen in BioShock look sane. All right, this is the kind of debauchery it led to. It was constantly satisfying and satiating these sexual and sadistic or masochistic fantasies that only elevated and elevated, and this was species-wide. People started going down darker, more depraved, and more violent paths as time went on. However, some people didn't entirely take to that. Some of the Eldar were looking at this depraved species that they had become and said, no thanks for me, dog, I'm good. And they bailed. These are the Craft World Eldar. They left on these giant continent-sized starships called Craft Worlds. They believed in learning the old ways of the Eldar and pushing away from this depravity and debauchery and going back to their main roots. And so they would segment themselves on these giant craft worlds far in the outer reaches of space. They even had this thing called the Webway. Remember what we mentioned about warp travel with the Imperium? Well, the Eldar had something way safer called a Webway. And the Eldar Webway is actually like a pocket dimension kind of thing. And in that pocket dimension, there were also more horrible, depraved groups and clans that would spend their time in there. And if you imagine the debauchery was bad already, these were debauchery X10. So all of this continued, and it continued, and it bloated until Slaanesh just burst forth. All that emotion, all that mental, thought processes, I suppose, all of this in such a condensed space. Don't forget, this is all being shot, all their souls as well, into the warp. All of this depravity right into the warp. So what happened? Boom! Slaanesh was birthed and killed off 90% of the entire Eldar population. Untold trillions had their souls ripped from their bodies and their actual fleshy bodies devoured by Slaanesh demons. The entirety of the Eldar race was eaten alive and their souls consumed to the Prince of Pleasure. All of them got fucked up. It was so bad that it literally ripped a warp hole into the fabric of the materium called the Eye of Terror. That's literally this like quasi horrifying gateway portal from the materium and the immaterium right next to Cadia.
Cadia.
And it is horrifying. So this Slaanesh, also known as She Who Thirsts by the Eldar, slaughtered the entire population except for a couple. Those in the craft worlds were actually not affected by this as they were so far in the reaches of the galaxy. That crazy crack, that birth of Slaanesh only affected the ones in the center. So these craft world Eldar were able to escape, but Slaanesh got their sights on them. Every time an Eldar will die, their soul doesn't just pass into the warp naturally. It goes straight to Slaanesh,
Damn.
craft world or not. What about those people in the Webway? Well, imagine that giant birth happening, but they were only able to just barely get a grasp onto you. Slaanesh was just barely able to hold on. These people are the Dark Eldar, or also known as the Drukhari. The Eldar population right now is so massively small. It is minuscule compared to any of the other most of the other populations in the universe. The Eldar are consistently having issues trying to get their population up because as their souls are constantly being hungered by from Slaanesh, they realize their entire species is doomed. And they understand it very well. Since the time of the fall, our race has been haunted by what we, in our reckless pursuit of hedonistic indulgence, gave birth to. Though our dreams once overturned worlds and quenched suns, we are now but fitful shadows clinging to the edge of existence. All the stars in the sky cannot blot out the hateful glare of the red moon's eye. The birthing place of the great enemy pulses with all the malice of a demon that is dreaming, casting its shadow over all we have ever done and all we ever shall. Every twisted strand of fate and casting of the runes leads me to this time, to this place, and it is clear that the final battle awaits me at the ancient Crone worlds, a conflict the likes of which has not been seen since the Monkai warred amongst themselves and their corpse of a seer fell to his traitorous son. Is coming, and all my steps lead towards it, no matter that I walk other paths. I see the stars stained red with the blood of the Monkai, and though their wars do not concern me, I would gladly let them destroy one another. I know that to avoid this fight is to condemn my race to inevitable doom, and though all I see is darkness, I know that I will not flinch from my destiny.
To get your ass eaten? That's the destiny I'm not going to flinch from. Also, why would I want to up my population to just do more people to be eaten? Like, what? Also, I think it's interesting. When I see that word, I think Monkei, not Monkai. Is that the word for human?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. All right. Interesting. Okay. Yeah, that doesn't make any sense. It's like, okay, we know we're all destined to have our souls eaten by Slaanesh, so let's make more of us.
So both Craftworld, Eldari, and Drukhari have ways of protecting their souls.
Okay, but you know that when you die, that is what will happen.
No. So...
Oh, to protect yourself from being eaten.
Right.
Oh, okay.
So the Eldari, the ones that live in the craft worlds, the quote-unquote more good, they have these things called soul stones.
Okay. Is he going to talk about that?
He did.
I said, is he going to talk about it?
Oh, I don't know. But when they die, they specifically created these, like, your body dies, your soul gets sucked into the stone.
Did I read about this? That they can be used to pilot mecha and stuff?
Yeah.
And then, okay, yes. Okay, I've read about this. This was in a book or something. And
So
I just remember that whoever they were fighting, like, grabbed it and, like, crushed it. And then they were like, you could hear the scream or whatever.
yeah, no, that soul got eaten.
That soul got eaten. Damn. Sorry, Squidward. Sorry, Squidward. Okay.
And now let's talk about cute plastic models.
Bro, I'm straight up not having a good time.
Oh, no.
The first playable race we have for the Eldar are the Craft World Eldar and living in those Craft World starships I mentioned earlier. And each of them have their own kind of craft world, almost like a Space Marine Legion. Each craft world is in itself its own special kind of group. And the Eldar themselves are very fast and rely a lot on trickery. They are squishy, a bit weak, but they're very in tune as psychers. Tons of psychers across the entire Eldar population, and their weaponry and abilities are fast and extremely hard-hitting, but of course rather fragile. Understanding an Eldar's brain is an exercise in futility. They are all over the place in confusion and trickery on a whole galactic scale. They fight weird, they think weirder, and Eldar in their own right really rely on this to keep their species alive. They need to think about deception and the strangeness of what they do if they truly want to not be immediately murdered and slaughtered wholesale thanks to their entirely small population. However, I must say that it seems like their population is getting slightly better. These craft worlds hold millions upon millions of people. And as they continually, reproduce and have their craft worlds expand, losing a few people in battle, while hurts a lot, they aren't really losing what's extremely precious to them. It's not like every single death means the death of their species. It seems like they're kind of on the upturn a little bit. They're still a doomed race being sucked into Slaanesh every time someone dies, but they are definitely doing a little bit better than they were before. Eldar are fast, cunning, And what they don't make up for in tankiness, they make up for in extremely advanced weaponry. They also call humans Monkai, which is something I mentioned earlier. That is
Again,
a
I would have said
derogatory
monkey.
slur for humans
alright.
in the Warhammer world.
Where's the
why-
IPA for this? I need the IPA. I need to know how to say it.
Called Monkai? Well, it's because you can't, in your game, call people monkeys. On the tabletop,
Okay.
not very tanky, generally pretty squishy, hit like trucks and move at Mach 5. Fast,
look
hit
kinda
hard,
cool.
die fast. Exactly how it sounds. They've been good for a very long time.
Ew, that guy looked ugly.
We
I won't
bring
go back.
only death
Those
and
miniatures
leave
are
only
really
carry
old.
on.
Oh,
It is a
alright.
message
Yeah.
even a human can understand.
Damn.
Eldar. So, Drukhari. Let's talk about the Dark Eldar.
On today's episode of How Fucked Up Is Fucked Up. That's fucked up.
So those people I mentioned in the webway, in the super deranged cults and the depraved people of the Eldar, in the webway they didn't quite get a hold onto them. Slaanesh like has them, but it has them on like by the pinky finger. And they're slowly being consumed by Slaanesh, but they found out they can stave her off by doing Slaanesh things. The Dark Eldar are by far the worst, most horrifying, disgusting, depraved, and brutal race in all of Warhammer 40K.
Really?
These are entirely a group of people whose full purpose to save their species from extinction, to go into planets, raid them, and take as many slaves as they possibly can to torture them for 1, 5, 10, 20, a million years, because that torture will keep them from dying. They look very BDSM style too. They definitely have a lot more spiky bits and they have a lot more of that kind of leathery black look to them. But let's say you are an upstanding Imperial citizen, living life on a regular planet. You get invaded by the Necrons. The Necrons
sucks.
will shoot you with a deatomizer, and you will be destroyed in a millisecond, and that's it.
That's all.
Not the worst way to go.
Okay.
You are invaded by Chaos Marines or something. You take a bolter shot to the head or a chain sword across your stomach, and you get cut in half. Painful, but
You're
not the
gone.
worst. The Orks arrive. They beat you to death. Hurts, but, you know, whatever.
You're dead.
Tyranids, they eat you alive. It's pretty rough.
Sucks.
The Dark Eldar. The Dark Eldar. This is going to get a little graphic. I apologize. You pray you die.
Okay.
You don't. You are instead taken as a human slave. Your life will be endless work and agony, 24/7. They will make sure you can't not die, as your pain satisfies them. They will hook you up to all manner of torture devices. They will inject pain-based like stimuli drugs directly into your nervous system. They will slowly run razor blades across your skin. They will fillet you and pull out your teeth and your fingernails one by one. They will remove your appendages and your skin and wait for it to grow back so they can do it again. They will murder and torture and use the R word, it rhymes with grape, your
Oh,
entire
no!
family in front of you and do the exact same thing to them. You yourself will also be rhymes with grape anywhere and everywhere possible.
It's not supposed to be funny, but he's just like, I can't. Alright.
And this will occur for 20 years until
20
you are no
years?
longer satisfying to them. And then you will be contorted, crushed, and twisted into some form of trophy. A fleshy trophy, or a ring, or a couch, or a TV stand,
Damn.
or perhaps a wonderful hat, while you are, of course, still alive and breathing. And you will become a moaning, fleshy trophy for eternity. And that is what happens when you are taken by the Dark Eldar. They are the most depraved, most horrifying race in all of 40K.
Damn.
They look the part, and they do it so they all don't die. They are literally forced to do this, because if they don't, Slaanesh's grip will get harder, and they will have their souls pulled away. So long as they keep doing this, Slaanesh is like, "You're doing good, man. You're doing solid. You keep that shit up, you elf-eared bastards." That's the Dark Eldar. That's the Drukhari. They are horrible. On the tabletop, they're actually kind of like Eldar, but more extreme. They are even squishier than the Eldar, but they hit generally even harder. Fast attacks, skirmishers, really quick, speedy, like get around them, do a lot of damage, get away kind of stuff. That's most of the Dark Eldar. Look up the definition of grim dark in a dictionary. You'll find a picture of the Dark Eldar. And Sev from Republic Commando. A quote from Mr. Vecht. We are the lords of despair, masters of terror. Dread and agony are our meat and wine, and they are plentiful indeed.
God damn.
Dark Eldar. Let's talk about the harlequins. Clowns.
Who the hell are the harlequins?
Don't you want to have some fun?
The harlequins are a bizarre race of Eldar. They're
Eldar too.
demonic
Okay.
clown performers.
What's with those pants?
They're like a weird mix of Sander Cohen from BioShock and Jin from League of Legends, but in a more clown theme. They're artists of death and
just
perfecters of their craft. They do not belong to Craft Worlds or any of the weird Drukhari people. They guard something called the Black Library, which is this giant tome of never-ending knowledge deep in the heart of the Eldar webway, and also guarded by their god named Kegorok, I believe is how you pronounce his name. He is the laughing god, but it's the Eldar's laughing god? And these are the Harlequins, the Harlequin clowns. These are Eldar clowns, okay? So imagine the things that an Eldar, these depraved individuals, would find funny. And this is the god of that. It's a horror clown. These are gods of horror for us normal people. For them, they're like, oh, it's so funny. They're all dying horribly. Oh, honk, honk. They're very bizarre and difficult to describe. They've escaped the ruinous powers of Slaanesh somehow, but their main thing is guarding that Black Library. And the Harlequins just... They're demon clown performers. They're barely any models on the tabletop. They're good at melee. They're demon clowns. I'm not sure. I got a quote. It is too easy for an Eldar to embrace the obscene virtues of chaos. For Slaanesh is nothing more than a
Okay, so wait. If they have a god, how does that god relate to chaos gods?
So very similar. So at the height of their civilization, they had an entire pantheon.
Okay.
Of gods that, they worshipped and whatnot. Most of their gods, were literally killed.
Okay.
There are...
How does one kill a god?
So funnily enough, their gods were not the first gods to die.
People just out here killing gods! What's wrong with this game? What's happening? What's happening? I don't know if I can handle that right now. I'm still over here dealing with clowns. I didn't even know these existed. I thought I knew of most things, but I did not know about these harlequins. So let me... Oh, look, he kept a misspelling grammar mistake error in there. I just live for these. I don't know why, but it tickles me.
Of the Eldar mind in its most wild and unconstrained form. Human morality is meaningless to the Eldar, and to the dark side of the Eldar mind, all life is to be expended at a whim. Cruelty and generosity are but the impulse of a moment. Beauty and sensuality are virtues that can be expressed in bloodshed just as easily as in song. To an unfettered Eldar mind, there is neither sanity nor madness, but merely a wave of perfect existence fulfilled by its own savage momentum. They're very strange.
They look
Harlequins,
strange.
Drukhari, Eldar, they are
It's
an
like
anomaly.
they're fucking the Joker's cousins or something. Just hanging out in space.
That make humans seem completely easy to understand in comparison. They range from rekindling their civilization to horrifying murder and also clowns. All over the place, but honestly, they represent quite well and are rather interesting, especially with the whole Slaanesh murdering everyone bit. So, yeah, Eldar. Now, bugs.
Tyranids! Tyranids!
The bugs.
The Tyranids. Now, you want to talk something a lot more fun, a little more simple than all this crazy Eldar shenanigans? Let's talk the Tyranids. They're bugs. Do they look like Zerg? Hell yeah, they look like Zerg. You want to know why they look like Zerg? Because they were actually supposed to be what Zerg were. Apparently StarCraft was supposed to be a 40K game in the beginning. Hence why they look so much like Eldar, Zerg, and the Imperium of Man. Like, kind of Space Marine-y, those Marines, huh?
Okay.
That's a little bit Space Marine-y to me. Maybe. I don't know. You really fucked up on that one, Games Workshop, didn't ya? Tyranids are a giant infestation of unfathomable proportions. These are giant, extremely bio-advanced hive mind organisms that are basically all about absorbing as much biomass as they possibly can to evolve and mutate to be extremely potent and powerful and kill and eat anything in their path. They are probably the least evil faction in all of 40K because all they want to do is eat shit. They want to nom nom the entire galaxy. They hangry and we food. Also, this Tyranid hive mind has a presence in the warp. In fact, Tyranids in their own right have a massive presence in the warp. They have a thing called the shadow in the warp specifically, where when they are coming in to invade a planet, they have this weird ability to kind of cut off the warp on all the psychers on that planet. And how do you get help across the stars? Well, you need the warp because you need that for interstellar travel.
Oh, damn.
So with people unable to call for help from the Tyranids,
oh no,
these are easy pickings. And an entire giant Tyranid hive fleet comes out of orbit and just will massacre, absorbing all that biomass and turning them and all of their other Tyranids into even more advanced monsters. They come in so many varieties too, all based on what is important. Tiny little ripper swarms for scouting and having little dudes eat people up, to the Hormigons, Termagants, and genestealers, all the way to the Hive Guard and the Exocrines and the Swarm Lord, to Hive Tyrants and their giant battle fleets, and even something as crazy as the Hierophant Bio-Titan. The Tyranids come in all forms and sizes depending on what they require. They are extremely good at anti-biological weaponry. There is no way you can plague them or blight them. They have extremely strong armor, carapaces and such. Tyranids are nigh perfect organisms and are pretty spooky when it comes down to how they handle all of their genetic material. Keep feeding them, they'll keep evolving. They keep on creating new horrifying organisms to spread across the galaxy. And you want to know what the most terrifying part of the Tyranids is? We might be surrounded. There have been like around 6 or 7 Tyranid hive fleets. Behemoth, Kronos, all these different kinds of hive fleets, and they've all arrived in the galaxy from different points. Different sections of the Milky Way galaxy have had different Tyranids come through. And that's scary. Horrifying.
Exactly.
Because as far as we know, we could just be surrounded on all sides by Tyranids. The only reason you may not hear a whole lot about Tyranids is because it's a little bit hard to have a bunch of story off of one hive mind genocidal monsters. All these giant bugs swarming in, killing and eating everybody and evolving. I mean, as cool as there are some cool characters, the Swarm Lord, Old One Eye, you can't really have a whole bunch of major character-based stories.
Who's the Swarm Lord, Old One Eye?
They are Tyranid organisms that are sort of like characters for the Tyranid army.
Okay.
So, like, in the lore, there's sort of, like, not a single Swarm Lord. It's, like, a special organism that a hive fleet will spawn that, like, runs around with 4 swords and super choppy.
Okay.
Old One Eye is a Carnifex type of Tyranid that, for whatever reason, every time he pops up, like, he's only got one eye.
Okay.
But they take the role as characters in the Tyranid army, since they don't have, like, people.
Okay. I don't know, that would be an interesting story to read. Like, I get that they're just bugs or whatever, but wouldn't it be interesting to, like, read from the hive mind's perspective as to why they're doing it and, like, how they're just basically running on instinct? And I'm assuming they have to learn. They don't just say, I'm just going to randomly throw things at this thing. They're learning as they're going and killing. So that would be an interesting story to read. It probably couldn't maybe fleshed out to a full novel, but I would read a short story on that, like just on a hive mind, like going through the whole process of learning about a planet and whatever. Because didn't you tell me that they can mate with organisms?
So I don't know that they've really gone into how exactly the spawning process happens, but I mean, like, they literally do, like, give birth to organisms.
That can be half Tyranid, right? Or am I thinking of something else?
You're okay. So genestealers, which are a specific type of Tyranid, they can effectively impregnate other species. So we see it with humans, where not only do they infect you, but like something happens to you, like on a biological level, that you essentially start worshiping the Tyranids. And so generation after generation after generation, your progeny go through this like cycle where they get more and more tyrannidy the further you go, until eventually like they're all just horrible mutants. But then those horrible mutants, when they go and have kids, they almost look like 98% human. You know, they might have like extra sharp teeth or like, you know, a little bone ridge or something on their back, but like they can pass for human, and the cycle keeps going and going and going.
Is there a book on this?
Yeah, actually I think so.
I need that. That sounds cool as fuck. Like, I would read that. Like, I would want to. Oh, can you imagine like the mental, like having to pass as human, but also possibly having the need to worship the hive?
I'll give you one better. There's actually a Warhammer Plus animation where it's not from the perspective of a genestealer cult. It's blood angels that get stranded in a system and they end up having to fight a genestealer cult.
Okay.
But it very much illustrates like the way they work.
That is going to be on my next to watch list. But I also need that book, so if I can find that out, get that.
Around them. As awesome as they are, they're simple. They want to eat you. They want to eat you and absorb your biomass. They are simple bugs. If you want something a little more complex, talk gene stealer cults.
I can have all the pie I want, I get around faster than walking, and wherever I need a seat, I can just sit on my balls.
Gene stealer cults are a special brand of Tyranid that can slowly infect themselves into different kinds of society. And by infecting them, they can rise up to where they all pray and believe in these regular humans, pray and believe into their Tyranid hive mind gods. And these brood lords, and I think they're called patriarchs, all can turn an entire world all based into gene stealers. And these are called gene stealer cults. An entire hive world of the Imperium can be turned into nothing but servants to the Tyranid masters just by infecting them and screwing with their genetic code a little bit. They also have this cool like Mad Max look, which is really neat. They are definitely one of the bigger threats to the Imperium besides Chaos. I keep saying biggest threat to the Imperium. They're up there though, because you, dingus, stepped on a bug in middle school. Asshole. There is a cancer eating at the Imperium. With each decade, it advances deeper, leaving drained, dead worlds in its wake. This horror, this abomination, has thought and purpose that functions on an unimaginable galactic scale. And all we can do is to try to stop the swarms of bioengineer monsters it unleashes upon us by instinct. We have given the horror a name to salvage our fears. We call it the Tyranid race. But if it is aware of us, it must know us as nothing but prey. Tyranids, they're cool. But are they as cool as the Orks?
Okay, wait, before we get to the Orks. So what's the relationship between like Tyranids and like the Chaos Gods? Are the Chaos Gods like, oh, they're just another organism, we don't care?
I mean, so Tyranids will eat any and everything.
I assume so.
So they're a problem for everyone.
Oh, okay, so even the Chaos Gods are like, yikes.
Yeah, Tyranids don't care if you're a Chaos Space Marine, a normal Space Marine, an Eldar craft world, you know, a Tau Sept, an Orc Enclave, you know, just a planet that's got more than just rock on it. They gonna eat.
They're going to eat. Okay. Here's another question. Going back to the Chaos Gods. Now, I know they talked about them and what they represent and everything, but do they actually manifest?
The gods themselves. We, as far as I know, 20 plus years reading stuff, I have not seen that.
Okay.
However, they do have like champions that absolutely do manifest.
Okay. To the Orks, everyone keeps telling me I'm going to love the Orks. I don't know. I love the Tyranids, and my love for the Tyranids came into being because I've always loved like lore and stories where there's like a hive mind. It's interesting to me, but also I just think they look so cool, and yeah, I actually have nothing against bugs. The only bug I can't stand are cockroaches, and I just always thought they looked really cool. Their design. I'm playing with Cindy on the desk. You guys can't see it, but Cindy looks really cool. So, Orks. Everyone keeps telling me I am going to love the Orks, so let us see if it is true.
Every screen's gone red. That means I'm super fast.
Orks, 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 orks.
Okay.
Fucking love orks. So, yes, the green monsters, the green tide, the green skins. These orks, they are in fact a race in 40K. The orks are as exactly what you expect them. They have archaic weapons, they're big boys, they have axes, and they have got big old teeth, and they want to kill everything, and there are so many of them. The only reason they haven't taken over the entire galaxy is they can't stop murdering each other. Orks are so cool. Orks don't have philosophy. Orks don't have existential crisis. What matters is who's the biggest ork. You listen to that guy because he the biggest ork. He big ork knows best. You win through the power of imagination. Of all the races I have battled throughout the galaxy, the ork is the hardest to comprehend. They wage war with machines that should not work, care little for strategic gains, and are just as likely to slaughter each other as the enemy. How does one battle an enemy that defies all logic? As an ork, you're enjoying life. You're enjoying the life you're given. Your whole life and job and purpose is to get up and beat each other to death because you can. The biggest ork is the man who understands everything. He is the boss. And orks have this really weird, like, big, dumb, stereotype British accent, which is just hilarious to me. Those are orks. You fight. You like to fight. Your whole purpose is to fight. You wage war because you want to wage war. You got your boss over there, and you better listen to the boss, because if you don't listen to the boss will squish you and make you an example for the other orks. And then you can't fight because ork dead. And ork dead can't fight because ork dead. Orks. They scrap together machines out of parts that don't make any sense, and because they believe, they have the mental imagination that that machine will run, it'll run. If that machine's out of gas, you're driving that machine with your fellow orks, and the biggest ork is behind the wheel, and you run out of gas, some ork behind you is like, oh, Zog, we're out of gas. And the big ork is like, no, we're not. I filled the fucking gas tank up earlier. And all the other orks are like, oh yeah, you did do that. And then you turn the fucking mech back on and it works again. Does it have gas? Probably not, but it works through the power of imagination. They paint things red because it makes them think they goes faster. They paint things purple because it's the sneakiest color. You want to know why? You ever seen a purple orc? Didn't fucking think so. Orcs are also like ancient as hell. They're back in the Eldari time frame. But back then they were called Orks, and they were much larger and scarier and far more intelligent. Now they're just orcs, and they're big, dumb, and they smack things. But they're pretty spooky. They're not very well armored, but they hit really hard, and it's called the Green Tide because there are so many orcs. There are about as many orcs as there are Tyranids. Maybe more. Who knows? But they keep on, murdering each other, so it's not too bad of an issue. Orcs are entirely comic relief. Their stuff is slapped together. That makes no sense. Their vehicles don't work the way they're supposed to, but they work.
They just shot two orcs out of a cannon.
It works because they imagine that it works. Orcs care only about who is the biggest orc, and they will follow the biggest orc. And then if they want to be the biggest orc, they'll challenge the biggest orc. And then when they go and they issue a wa is just war in orc, they murder everybody and everything in this giant tide of green orcs who are just excited to be hitting something. They don't care that they're hitting Eldar or the Imperium or Tau or anyone in between.
There's so
They're
much
just
going
so
on
they
in
get
the
to
background.
beat shit up. That's orcs. And on the tabletop, they are a total coin flip, and they're really fun. I have never met a salty orc player. I have never met someone who plays orcs and is ever just a bad guy or that guy. Orc players have this kind of fun to them because when you play them, you are completely submitting yourself to RNG. So here's the thing. Guardsmen, Imperial Guardsmen, when they shoot, they roll a dice, and on a 4 up, they'll hit their target. They have a 50% chance. Space Marines, pretty good. They hit on a 3 or higher because they're well trained. Adeptus Custodians, they hit on 2s because they're just super well trained. Orcs, they hit on a 5 or higher. But if they roll a 6, they get to make another shot with anything from the dinkiest pistol to the biggest rocket launcher. It doesn't matter. Half of their stuff will blow up on a whim. One of their medics, if you roll a 1 to heal someone, you fuck up your surgery and you just kill an orc. They're so wacky and silly. But the thing is if you roll well, you roll high, and you keep rolling high, you are going to crush people. And if you don't, you lose. I mean, that's what you get when you play orcs. That's what happens when you play orc. It's a coin flip. Which is why you can't be a salty bitch when you play orcs, because things won't go your way. It's just the roll of the dice. You're playing a dice game. But if you're going to have fun and you want to be stupid and you want to be silly, you're going to play some damn orcs. But on the opposite...
See, now, I guess you guys are right. The description of them sounds fun, and if I were to ever get into the game, it sounds fun. But aesthetically, I can't get into it. Like, their vehicles and stuff look really cool. Their guns and stuff look cool, but I could never be an orc. I'm sorry. I do have a question about their imagination. So was he just tongue-in-cheek, or are they somewhat psychic, or...
Oh, they're very psychic.
Oh, they are psychic. So when they're literally like, my car will run, that's them unconsciously or consciously making it run?
And when they paint it red, and they're like, the red ones go faster.
They are making it go faster.
Ones go faster.
So wait, do they know that they're psychic, or is it just...
So they're called weird boys.
Okay, weird boys. Okay.
So that's like the orc equivalent of like a human psyker. Like they're slinging spells around and everything. The average orc would probably not consider themselves like psychically attuned, and it's more of like a gestalt sort of effect for most of the race. And then the weird boys are actually able to tap into that and then like channel it for some sort of like desired effect.
So do the Marines know this?
So who would probably know the most are the Ordos Xenos Inquisitors.
Okay.
And by extensions, the Marines that work under them in the Death Watch.
But I would think...
So, like, when you get chosen to go serve in the Death Watch, you specifically are hunting Xenos.
Right, but I would think maybe... I figure almost every chapter has had a run-in with orcs before. I'm assuming, no?
At some point, but some chapters...
Run into them more than others.
Right. Deal with them more often than others.
So wouldn't a chapter that has or had an affinity for psychers kind of figure out what's going on? Like maybe the
Probably.
maybe whatchamacallit?
Well, so the other...
Not the Emperor's Children. Hold on. I'm trying to test myself here. See if I know the name of the Legion. I know the Primarch. Thousand Suns. Magnus.
So
That's right?
I am sure that they probably, can sense what's happening and figure it out and everything. So Orc psychic abilities are... It's not, like, controlled channeling.
Okay.
Like, they don't necessarily have a human's ability to, like, gauge, like, I don't want to draw too much power because then I'll hurt myself. Like, that doesn't exist in an orc mind.
Okay.
So, orc weird boys are just as likely to, like, channel way too much power and then blow themselves up as they are to, like, shoot a fireball at you. So, hilariously, in orc society, like, everyone just instinctually stays away from the weird boys because they don't know
what's gonna happen. It's just like, okay, bruh. Like, I'm just gonna walk away from here. Okay. Wow, that's interesting. Yeah, the orcs seem very cool, but again, aesthetically, they are not pleasing to my eye, so I don't think I could play them. Tyranids, though. I could get behind some Tyranids. Not interested in the Eldar. They don't really seem that interesting to me, personally. But especially the harlequins, like weird-ass clowns.
Side of the fun part of this, let's talk about the necrons.
Okay, the necrons I admittedly know jack squat about, so...
The necrons are spooky, scary skeletons and very grimdark again. They have a much more fleshed out lore than before. Back in the day, they were just undead Egyptian space terminators, and they still look that way, but now they actually have a story. So way back in the day, you had the necron tier. Kind of see a theme here: Eldari, Eldar, Krork, Ork, Necron, and Necron tier. So the necron tier were this race of generally kind of shitty people. Not because they were personally shitty, but because their lives were awful. They were ill-fated to a horrible existence of like radiation and a terrible planet they lived on, and everything just really sucked. Being a Necron tier was just really depressing. They really were looking for immortality. They were extremely reliant on the hope that they would eventually find the key to living forever and just stave off this horrible nature that they were thrust upon them, and therefore they could become the most dominant race in the galaxy. And they found this group. They're called the Old Ones. Imagine them kind of like the Forerunners in Halo or the Xel'Naga in StarCraft, right? These Old Ones were these strong, pretty much omnipotent beings, and they, of course, knew the key to immortality. So the Necrons went to them and said, please, show us your ways. And the Old Ones said, piss off. Right. Not really. They were a lot more humble about it, but they did not want to share their secret of immortality with the Necrons. The Necrons, of course, took this very well and waged war with them, kind of under this united banner. The Necron different dynasties didn't really like each other, but under this one man, the Silent King, he thought the best way to unite his race was to do this giant war with the Old Ones out of spite for them keeping the secret of immortality to them. This was known as the War in Heaven, and this is actually like a multi-stage war, because during this war in heaven, they discovered the Star Gods, a whole new race of people known as the Catan, or the Catan. These Star Gods were also very much like Old Ones, almost omnipotent beings, and they too had the key to immortality. And so the Necrons went to them and said, hey, can you help us fight off the Old Ones? Can you help us kill these Old Ones, you, the Catan? And the Catan said yes. And in fact, we can help provide you with the immortality you so desperately seek. So the Silent King of the Necrons decided to make a pact with the Catan to allow them to accept this generous gift of immortality upon
I just noticed the legs.
But this, of course, had been a horrendous trap, and the Necrons were dragged in chains to this biotransference where their flesh was stripped from them, replaced with nothing but a metal hollow shell, as their souls were ripped from their body and fed to the Catan. And the Catan fattened up. They got chonk on the souls of the Necrons. As this was their plan all along, they consumed the flesh and souls of the Necron tier and turned them all into unwilling robotic slaves just to serve their will. And then, with their new-founded Necron army, they pointed their guns at the Old Ones, and the Catan continued their domination of the stars and their genocide, complete and full genocide of these Old Ones. The old ones did their best to stave it off. They even created other races, the Eldari and the Orks, to try to fight off the horrifying Necron army and the Catan above them. But there was absolutely no possible chance for them. And the old ones were absolutely extinguished across the galaxy. Their entire race completely removed. Full-on 100% genocide. However, during all...
So, was it... So the old ones are the... So the old ones made the Eldar. They made the Orks. By making the Eldar, they made Slaanesh. Like, why? Why would that have been a good idea? Like, I don't think they knew that Slaanesh would come, but, like, let's make a race that just... What are the Orks plants?
Fungus.
They're fungus, okay. So you got some fungus running around, somewhat psychic fungus, and then you got the Eldar who are like, yay, let's be depraved and do stuff.
To be fair, not all of the Eldar were depraved.
The ones that were in the craft worlds were not.
Correct.
Okay.
And
But
also the harlequins.
I don't count those as things. Those are just
Yeah,
creepy
they-
clowns. They're creepy clowns.
All this, the Catan, so just infatuated with their victory, started fighting each other for fun, for sport, and for small differences, doesn't matter. The Catan, with these overpowered people, they're going to eventually hit each other at some point. And as they began just menially fighting each other, the Eldari and the Orks actually started pushing on the Catan's borders a little bit, giving them a little bit of a run for their money. And as this continued, this is when the Silent King, who retained his consciousness, decided to leap into action and start a full-scale revolt against their Catan masters. And this revolt was bloody, as the entire Necron army was surged off to destroy these star gods. They were...
Wait, how did they do that? I thought the Catan controlled the Necrons. So how did the Silent King get control again?
So are we talking like in their past?
Like, apparently the Silent King was like, let's go against our oppressors. But just a second ago, he was just like, they took their souls and forced them to be slaves. So how did...
Oh, so when they went through the process that like transferred their souls into the metal bodies, most people's minds deteriorated. Not everyone.
Okay. So there are some people who still have their consciousness and their...
Yeah.
Okay, gotcha.
Were able to, just after suffering horrendous losses, were able to turn the tide of the war. And they took these Catan and they blasted them. Because as these star gods are unkillable, they were able to break them into thousands of shards and entrap them in giant stasis vaults to now actually be slaves to the Necrons.
Oh, damn.
And with the Necrons having the entirety of their old gods enslaved to them, they realized that soon their race was about to be attacked by the overcoming new races, the Eldari and the Orks. And so what they did is they retreated into giant stasis tombs in order to preserve their energy and their strength for when one day they would be reawakened and they would be able to rule the galaxy that was rightfully theirs. And then some dingus Adeptus Mechanicus guy diddled with a green console, and now the Necrons are back, and they see all these primitive races on their lawns, and they get the fuck off of it. The Necrons are back, super advanced, and they are here to reclaim the galaxy that they so rightfully believe is theirs. Now, at tabletop, they're a lot like that. Tons of undead Egyptian skeleton robots that when they die, they just get right back up because they keep on reanimating. Hard to kill, tons of crazy stuff. You can use the Catan themselves as units to fight with.
Cool.
It's pretty cool. The Necrons are one of the three major events in 40K. The Horus Heresy, the Fall of the Eldar, and the Awakening of the Necrons are all pretty substantial events. And the Necrons themselves are pretty dang cool as well. Here's a good quote from a wonderful Dawn of War game. "Lucky creatures, as long last you have found the tranquility of death. I was like you once, clinging to life and blind to the truth. When I uncovered the truth, I too shuddered and paled with fear. Deep in these catacombs I was remade. Here my brethren slumbered for eons while the living grew like weed. My Lord knew this day would come. He had plans for us all. We would purge this world once more. So come, poor victims of life. We will grant you tranquility in these crypts. Kronos will be a tomb world once more. Necrons are also pretty smug. Trays in the Infinite especially. A little
Mr.
dickhead.
Steal your...
But speaking of dickheads, last race. Let's talk the Tau.
Okay.
The exact formation of the Tau Empire is not entirely understood. However, a long time ago, many thousand
I just noticed the legs.
in the 40K world, that is, some Imperial navigation vessels were going around through different areas, and they saw a primitive race, blue people, smacking each other with sticks and stones. They thought, dumb Xenos race, who gives a shit, and they bailed. Then this giant warp storm occurred right in that major area, unable to be breached. Then, once that warp storm 6,000 years later subsided, hello, those little sticks. Well, they decided to actually have no war of any kind and all just unite together under one flag of the Tau Empire. And now they have gigantic starships and Gundam robots and lasers and railguns and mechs, and they are here to ruin your day for the greater good. That is generally the Tau Empire. They have this kind of feeling of this homogenous group. All species can go underneath the banner of the greater good. The greater good is their idea of the fundamental increase and help of all. In fact, they are most likely the most like the Covenant in Halo, where they have the overarching prophets, being the ethereals, who are actually kind of dicks and like to pull at strings a little bit, but then you have all these different races directly underneath them, and they all work together in this big group as this large, foreboding race that tries to spread their weirdly pseudo-religious influence across the galaxy. The alien is not intrinsically evil. Do not hate him. Pity him, his ignorance. Seek to understand his differences and equate him with his inadequacies. Only then will he accept his place in the greater good. That is generally the Tau. And if you're kind of wondering like what their mainly big shtick is, well, they're all about big robots and mechs. They have laser rifles and rail guns. They got giant mechs with tons of missile pods, heavy rail rifles and rail guns, and burst cannons and ion accelerators and void shields and all this stuff. And that is generally what the Tau's all about. But you're probably thinking, Bricky, this doesn't sound that evil.
It doesn't.
This doesn't sound
Sounds
very
great.
Grim dark Warhammer. And you'd be right. The Tau Empire really don't have that much of a horrifying grim dark style like everybody else. They're much more younger, new age thing. In fact, they're probably a lot less evil and a lot even better than they are now back in the day, because they liked having like that good guy faction. But a lot of us who really like the dark, depressing style of Warhammer didn't really like it that much. So, see, the Tau get a lot of hate, and a lot of that hate isn't necessarily unjustified. It's mainly from a tabletop perspective, but as you can see from all the visuals I've shown you recently, they don't really fit in the 40K universe very well. They lack that super dark, dramatic, kind of high gothic level the Imperium has. They don't have the weird kind of like grungy stuff that Chaos or say the Orks do. And the Necrons and the Eldar have their own specific style as well. The Tau really do look like something out of Gundam. And while it isn't necessarily a bad thing, it does definitely not fit too well. There's that. There's also the tabletop problem. In tabletop, Tau are horrible at melee combat, but exceptionally good at range combat. So they blast everyone from really, really far away, and they have a million rules to make it so that it's nearly impossible for you to get into melee combat. So it basically just forces you to bottleneck the game into one specific gameplay style, which is gun to gun. And if you're doing gun to gun, they're going to win every time, because they're the Tau, and the Tau are really damn good at shooting. So it's one of those things that make the Tau generally rather hated, and a lot of different reasons for that, both from style and such. But this is actually one of the things I wanted to end this video with, is that the Tau, while they have their issues, You should not be discouraged from playing them. I'll make plenty of Tau weeaboo jokes, of course I will, but it's all generally in good fun. Anyone who legitimately doesn't want you to play a faction is an idiot, and you shouldn't be giving them the time of day. You pick what you think is cool and what you like. In Warhammer, especially now, factions get better and they get worse. They grow and then they fall. You should only be playing what you think is cool. You like the look, you like the models. If you're talking tabletop, that is what you should be going for every time, is what you think is badass, because things change all the time. But the universe of Warhammer has so much going for it. Every faction has something interesting, every character has a story, and there's a million stories to be told. The universe is vast and exciting, and while it is dark, depressing, and horrible, that is the damn charm. And out of everything I've told you in these two videos, if anything you could take away is the reason why so many of us are so into this series and why we like it so much. Because with so much variety, such an expansive universe, and so much that can be done, you can find yourself having a pretty great time.
He is very entertaining. I will give him that. Let's see. What can I say? Learned a lot. Actually, really, like, this video, I think I've learned the most. Like, so the other videos that I've made for the channel, like, I had pieces of information and things. This one, like, a lot of the Xenos, I knew of them, but I didn't know details of them, like the necrons and the Tau and the Eldar, and the Orks. All of them. Let's just say all of them. Favorite takeaway. The Tau sound freaking awesome. Like, why aren't more people siding with the Tau?
So, did he talk about the ethereal class?
That doesn't sound familiar.
Okay, so they have this caste system.
Wait. Yes, wait. Yes, he did. I think. ADHD brain. Where it's like they're on top and then other races would be below them.
Well, so, like, in the greater good, Tau are over everyone as sort of benevolent,
Right. Yes,
dictators.
he touched on that. Yeah.
But within Tau society, you have the fire caste, which are the soldiers, the earth caste, which are like their engineers,
Okay.
the water caste, they're diplomats, and then the air caste, they're like
Yeah, he didn't
fighter
talk about
pilots.
Yeah.
And they're all equal.
Okay.
Like, they have the same social standing. On top of everybody is the ethereal class.
Okay.
And whatever, so like, even though they're all Tau, each class, it's actually like a genetic deviation. So like, they're genetically suited to whatever, their caste does. So like, the fire caste tends to be bigger and bulkier.
Okay.
The air caste, they evolved to actually like live in space.
Okay.
The water caste, the diplomats, like, they're, evolved to like be polyglots and, be able to absorb information a lot quicker than everybody else.
Okay.
The ethereal class, they have strongly hinted that somehow they're able to exert their will on all of the other Tau.
Oh, that's nice.
And that's why the greater good works. It's not that all of the Tau just like...
fall in line and like it.
Right. Like, it's very strongly hinted that somehow the ethereals are effectively mind controlling
Nothing wrong with a little mind control.
the society. Personally, and I this is pure speculation, I feel like it's probably something biological, like they might be exuding some sort of pheromone that like makes people want to do what they say. And there's tons of propaganda in their society.
Okay.
And the people who sort of question what's going on and why things are happening have a tendency to
Disappear? Yeah, it's fine. Gotta get out the dissenters, A little mind control don't hurt nobody. I'm just saying. I don't know. On paper, it sounded good. What else was I gonna say? Everyone was right. The orcs sound really cool. Again, don't think I could play them. I think the Tau look pretty awesome. I get, like, as he was showing more pictures, I was like, okay, I get it. Like him saying that it doesn't really match the overall aesthetic of the game, but they still just look cool. And I would play a fucking Gundam. Like, I want to be a Gundam on the table. That's me. If I magically got into this game and I had to choose, I would probably do Tyranids first, and then I would do Tau. Tau look pretty cool. They look pretty cool. This was really informative. I liked the second half. It was very I liked the fact that he separated it. Like, first half is like humans, and then second half was like, you know, Xenos and everything. So that was interesting. Also learned more about the Chaos gods, like it's all terrible. I would be interested to read a book where they manifest and what goes on from there. But, you know, I have all these ideas for books and I just need someone to write them so I can read them. So I will give this video a 12 out of 10 because it was entertaining. It was accessible for someone who's still learning about Warhammer. And I sat and I watched the entire thing. I was actually originally thinking, hey, I'll make this like a part two, but I was actually engrossed and really engaged in what he was talking about and learning more. So, well done again, Mr. Bricky. Phrases to take away. We've got Cindy the Tyranid. We've got alphabets and Omega Ryan. I am putting that on a shirt. And someone better buy this damn shirt. I am going to wear this shirt probably in the next video, alphabets and Omega Ryan. But yeah. Alphabets, Omega Ryan, Cindy the Tyranid. Anything else stands out? Death Eaters. For some reason, I keep saying the Death Guard are the Death Eaters, so might make a shirt of that too. But yeah, thank you for tuning in. I'm sure I'm gonna tell Bernard to put a little turntable video of Cindy so you can see what she looks like. She is very, very pretty, and if Bernard gives her to me, I'll probably put her on my desk at work. I'm sure all my patients will be like, what the hell? What is that? But I'll be like, hey, it's cool. Anyway, thanks for tuning in. Please like, subscribe, and we will do our damnedest to make content on a more consistent schedule. We just keep getting so busy and lazy, but yeah, we'll get better. All right, thanks guys. Have a good night. Bye.